So this is a moment when we are going to see wonders of a very miraculous and beautiful kind, along with the worst horrors.
Right.
And it's a paradox.
Well, you mentioned something about grace being behind this darkness. So you're saying that God consciousness is creating this destruction.
Indirectly, let's put it this way, the egos are creating it. It's a fallen state, but God gives every being free will, and we have misused our free will and chosen to fall into lower forms of enjoyment and cut ourselves off from God and from the Dharma, the values that would sustain society. So in our free will, we have violated the laws of God. So in that sense, God is innocent of it because he gives us that free will, and we've misused our freedom. But because we still have freedom to return to God and to let go of the ego, but we have to be willing to go through ego death in order to do that, God's grace is there and is lifting us up. And it brings with that wisdom. What we will all gain from this is the realization that we must stay in God consciousness in order to sustain the world. So the next cycle of time, we will have that wisdom gained that will enable us to prolong that heavenly period before there would be another fall. And there's a learning. The world is a wisdom school, and we are all gaining wisdom, and some will graduate from the school and be done with this level of reality and go on to a more cosmic level of reality.
Do you think that everybody has the ability to graduate? Like, what does it take out of on an individual level for one to graduate into that God consciousness?
Well, the problem is you have to want to. Very few people want to, or even think it's possible, or even imagine it. Most people are atheists altogether, and they don't think there is anything beyond the ego. And the current ideology is materialism, Darwinism, consumerism, and even the most intellectual people today are usually believers in psychoanalysis, which says the limit of consciousness is the ego, and anything beyond that is a fantasy. It's an illusion. So they cause people to feel it's ridiculous, it's a fantasy, and if we're mature, we'll stay in the ego and the drudgery of that level and accept that as that's all that's possible. And people don't even try. But if you have enough intellectual curiosity for the truth, then you will discover in the practice of meditation that there is a level of consciousness beyond the ego, and it's filled with light and filled with insight that you won't get any other way but through meditating, and the ability to transcend and feel the blissful presence of God. And it's that, once you have the taste of God consciousness, that brings you to be able to break free of all the ideologies and belief systems of Kali Yuga.
Well, something really interesting that connected to me through your teachings was that idea that the ego has captured our soul, which now has severed our connection to spirit. So you're saying that once we're able to return back to our soul, free the soul, then we're able to restore that connection with God and God consciousness. How does one do that, though? Like just meditation, or?
Well, the soul is asleep. So the soul is not aware of itself. This is part of the problem. This is why the awakening is so important. And as people see how bad things are, and they recognize the deceptive nature of not only the egos running the world and the media, but their own ego is lying to them, and it's creating false desires and beliefs and an inability to love and to relate properly. And so people begin to do an inner quest of how can I get free of my own addictions and my own fears and anxieties and depression, and they begin a process that usually is psychotherapeutic, not spiritual, but they will often get to that point, because even many therapists now are turning to spirituality because they see the hopelessness of psychology in its current state, and people are beginning to say there must be something more. And when you do that, then the soul will be triggered to awaken, and it will extract itself from the ego and go through a rite of passage, which we call ego death. That it's really not death, because the ego is not alive. It's just an operating system. It'll be deleted from your software in your brain, and then you'll download the operating system of divine presence and the intelligence, the Sat Chit Ananda of God consciousness. The infinite intelligence of God will come, and then you, by surrendering to that, then life becomes spontaneous in accord with the Tao or the Dharma of the will of God. That's the logos in Christianity, and all of the religions speak to the same issues. There's only one religion in the world, and one spiritual path with many names. But now that is awakening in everyone.
That's really beautiful. I think, on a practical level, for somebody who has a desire, recognizes that their ego is, many people have this self-awareness, I think, to see that they're being controlled by habits and loops of their behavior, but they also have a deep desire to fix and to be whole again and to rise up above that which is holding them down. Is there, what is a great practical piece of advice that we could give to somebody in that situation who's asking for first steps of help?
Okay. First is to understand the structure of consciousness at the ego level, and then at the soul level, and then at the supreme level. At the ego level, the consciousness is split between a conscious and a subconscious. And in between there is a sensor. There's an agency that determines what your conscious mind can know, what it can remember, and what it can make use of, and what it will forget, what it will not be able to take in, and what it will repress. Right, Freud discovered this back 150 years ago now, but it was something that all of psychology is based on, the recognition really that we have a subconscious mind. That's where the habits are, and they're based on fantasies and childish constructs, because the ego is created when you're still an infant, and so we are run by an infantile program, and that's when you're an adult and you see you're still acting like a child, you say something is wrong here, right? Now, in the traditional cultures, there was a rite of passage at puberty, and people would then go through an ordeal and a vision quest, and they would get a new name, and they would realize their true identity, and the childish ego would be gone. But we don't have such a rite of passage anymore. So people remain children throughout their lives, and when the world is run by infantile beings.
I say that all the time. I look at the people running the world, and they're just like big kids. There's no sense of moral code or responsibility or just or duty. It's just they're run by the impulses of the ego, of whatever it is that is the driver inside of them. And it's fascinating, but also terrifying at the same time.
Indeed. But once you realize that it's a program and you extract yourself from it, then you're able to delete the program. But the ego is tenacious. So the only way to get out of it is to practice meditation. And you have to distinguish your buddhi from your manas. This is part of the yogic understanding. Manas, buddhi, ahankar. Ahankar, aham means I, right? But the ahamkar is the I thought. And the ego mind will continue to produce I thoughts. I want this, I hate that, I should do this, right? All of those I thoughts. And the manas then creates narratives about them. Oh, those people are like this. And it's full of projections and judgments and all kinds of negative attitudes toward the world. The buddhi is the capacity of the intellect to discern the illusion that the manas and the ahankara are creating. So if you awaken your buddhi, that which is becoming a Buddha, right? You awaken the buddhi at the soul level, you are then able to deconstruct the ego. But to awaken the buddhi, you have to silence the ego mind. because nearly, let's say 99% of your thoughts are ego thoughts. They're not the Buddhist thoughts, they're ego thoughts, and they are deceiving you.
Right.
And so until you get to the point where you are master of your mind and you can keep the mind silent for a long period in meditation, then you create a space in which you download higher knowledge and power, willpower, that the ego doesn't have because it is in internal conflict with itself. The ego wants so many different things that its willpower is paralyzed and deadlocked generally, because it doesn't know what it really wants, because it lacks essence. But once the buddhi is awakened and the heart is open, because this happens at chakra 4 and then chakra 5, which is the wisdom chakra. When these two are integrated, then you have the willpower, the wisdom, and the love of life, of God, of truth, of nature, of beauty, to be able to bring about a harmonious life for yourself and to create that for everyone in your sphere of influence.
Right.